The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Nicos Anastasiades, President of the Republic of Cyprus, and I request the protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome His Excellency Nicos Anastasiades, President of the Republic of Cyprus, and to invite him to address the Assembly.
Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, with only a few months left of my 10-year tenure in office, I stand before you to address the plenary session of the General Assembly for the very last time. I would have wished nothing more than for this address to have been a reflection of positive developments in what humanity has had to face or is facing. Like all of you, I would like to have applauded the results of the implementation either of the provisions of the UN Charter or of the decisions and resolutions of the General Assembly and the Security Council, which would have assured that any threats or attempts to bring into question the sovereignty, territorial integrity of any UN member state had been brought to a complete halt or minimized. That long-standing conflicts, disputes have been resolved or were in the process of being resolved in accordance always with the decisions and resolutions of the United Nations. That the need for the organization's reform would have led to the effective prevention of new threats and challenges to world peace. That through its new role, the UN would have implemented projects to effectively combat hunger and to improve the living conditions of hundreds of millions of people in dire need of aid. That the number of refugees and migrants forced to flee from their homes due to conflict or poverty would have been greatly reduced. That further, we would have been able to tackle social and economic exclusion, lack of adequate healthcare standards, and shortage of educational opportunities. That sustainable development would have finally become a reality of all countries and regions in need by establishing the necessary political and socio-economic conditions which led to stability, economic growth, and institution building. That measures for the prevention of climate change and its devastating consequences would have been implemented consistently by all parties involved. That terrorism and religious fundamentalism would have given way to tolerance and understanding. That the trillions of dollars spent on destructive weapons would instead have been spent on actions and programs aiming to bridge the gap between rich and poor states. And finally, that multilateralism would have been the guiding doctrine of all states. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in addressing the General Assembly in 2018 and referring to the weakness of dealing with the same problems, I had wondered, and I'm quoting, how is it then that we come back again and again, year after year, as a kind of ritual, to attest to the dismal lack of effectiveness for some and the embellishment attempt for others for what is in fact our inability to fulfill the aims of the UN Charter. And I was continuing, why do the decisions of the Security Council remain in their overwhelming majority sheer certificates attesting violations? Why is international law and international agreements not implemented? Why do strategies and programs aiming at creating better conditions for people that are suffering remain wishful thinking? Esteemed friends, although I'm well aware that what I am about to say is well known to all of you, for the sake of history, I cannot but relay some truths which are leading to a declining path and gradual loss of credibility of the United Nations, an organization which was formed right after the Second World War to prevent new disasters, provide protection and hope to those in need of effective protection and action against all the challenges I have already mentioned. I know that what I'm saying may be outside the bounds of diplomatic etiquette, but I do believe that the obligation of each leader before history is not to overlook failings and shortcomings in favor of wishful thinking or flattery. That is why I will proceed with a review not just of the reasons which have transformed the organization into a repository of problems, but also to what states are required to do in order to provide credibility to the organization, as well as the ability to effectively impose international legal order or to consistently implement decisions and programs for the benefit of humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, the weakness and inefficiencies of the United Nations is due to, first, the fact that the international law is preceded by financial or other interests of powerful member states. Second, that despite the end of the Cold War, alliances based on common interest lead to tolerance towards states which violate international law if the offender is under their sphere of influence. Third, the resurgence of hegemonic tendencies by some states with the aim of creating new empires at the expense of smaller states and in violation of international law. Fourth, despite the declared intention of the Secretary General of the United Nations to proceed with the much needed reform and modernization, as well as its modus operandi and decision-making process, the lack of willingness on the part of the aforementioned states has not allowed for the implementation of such a change. And fifth, as a result of the same political expediencies, the United Nations, unfortunately, adopts an equal distance stance even when faced with the violation of decisions, resolutions, and defined scope and terms of reference specified to the Secretariat. This, my dear friends, results in emboldening offending states which not only disregard international law, but also create new precedents outside the framework of legality. Mr. President, I have set out the main reasons for the lack of effectiveness and also the weakness of the UN to live up to the expectations of billions of people. I know I may be considered as a romantic ideologist, but I believe that recent events and problems affecting the world do not leave any choice other than the taking bold but necessary decisions, such as identification of the causes that lead to unnecessary rivalities and conflicts and renewal of our commitment to a global order based on international law. A global order which ensures that peace, security, human rights, and sustainable development remains the highest values which we undertake to preserve and hold. B, political will and determination to proceed with the reform and modernization of the UN to a just and efficient multilateral governance system. And this reform and modernization process becomes even more imperative and urgent with the imminent danger after 77 years of a new world war following the Russian aggression and the illegal invasion of Russia to Ukraine. Distinguished friends, my reference to the need for reforms, to the structure and implementation mechanism of decision taken by the UN does not only arise from my assessment as to other international problems, but also from what my country still endures and suffers as a result of the Turkish invasion of Cyprus in 1974. It is with deep disappointment that I heard President Erdogan claiming that, and I quote, "As Turkey, we want all issues in the Aegean Sea and the Eastern Mediterranean to be solved with the framework of good neighborly relations and in conformity with international law." How ironic is it for the Turkish president to put forward such a claim when every day he threatens to overtake Greek islands, or when he commits thousands of violations of the airspace of the sovereign and neighboring country contrary to international law? How even more provocative is it to express the desire to resolve disputes in conformity with international law when he refuses to implement numerous resolutions of the United Nations on the Cyprus problem and creates new fait accompli? How much in conformity with international law is his refusal to abide by A, the General Assembly Resolution 3212 adopted in October 1974, which urges the speedy withdrawal of all foreign armed forces and foreign military presence and personnel from the Republic of Cyprus, and the cessation of all foreign interest in its affairs, interference in its affairs. B, a resolution which, endorsed by the Security Council Resolution 365 in December of the same year. C, the Security Council Resolution 1251 of 1999, which reaffirmed its position that Cyprus settlement must be based on a state of Cyprus with a single sovereignty, international personality, and a single citizenship, with its independence and territorial integrity safeguarded in a bizonal, bicommunal federation. It also stressed that such a settlement must exclude union in whole or in part with any other country or any form of partition or cessation. Mr. Erdogan last year claimed that efforts should concentrate on reaching a settlement based on the so-called realities on the ground, whilst this year he spoke about the need for everyone to see the truth and that there are two distinct states and two distinct peoples on the island today. And I am wondering, dear friends, as to which truth is he talking about. The truth that 37% of the territory of the Republic of Cyprus, an UN and EU member state, remains under military occupation. Excuse me. The truth that after the Turkish invasion of 1974, 1/3 of the Greek Cypriots were forced to leave their ancestral homes. The truth that they have implanted hundreds of thousands of Turkish nationals to the occupied areas, thus altering the demographic character of the island, turning the Turkish Cypriot community into a minority in the areas they illegally occupy. The truth that Turkey has established an illegal entity in the occupied areas which is under its absolute political, economic, social, cultural, and religious control. An illegal entity, bear in mind, described by the European Court of Human Rights as a subordinate local administration of Turkey. Another question, the truth that Turkey tries to equate the state, the internationally recognized Republic of Cyprus, with the illegal secession entity. The truth that the above proclamation of the purported secession had been condemned by the Security Council and considered legally invalid. The truth that the Security Council called for its reversal, and for all states and the international community as a whole not to accept it or in any way assist it. The truth that they are trying to change the status of the fenced city of Famagusta contrary to the UN Council resolutions 550 and 789. The truth that Turkey adopts its own arbitrary interpretation of international law, which reduces the exclusive economic zone of Cyprus by 44% at the expense of both Greek and Turkish Cypriots, contrary to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, as I have noted earlier, when decisions or resolutions based on international law are not to be implemented or enforced, then these, rightly so, could be perceived as fostering or even rewarding arbitrariness. This is actually what we are witnessing today with the Cyprus problem. Turkey, which systematically violates international law, calls on the international community to recognize its illegal fait accompli. Esteemed friends, unfortunately, this was the long-standing aim of Turkey ever since 1956. That is why, despite historical compromises by the Greek Cypriot side, all efforts on reaching a settlement of the Cyprus problem failed as a result of the intransigent stance and irrational demands of Turkey. The latest example being the conference on Cyprus held at Grand Montana in July 2017, during which, as regards the internal aspects of the Cyprus problem, the UN Secretary General assessed in his report on 28 September 2017 that and I quote, "the core outstanding issues related to governance and power sharing remained few, and that by the time the conference closed, the sides had essentially solved the key issues of effective participation." Thus, while the aim of the Secretary General to reach a strategic agreement was within close reach, The reason of their successful outcome was Turkey's inflexible stance and insistence on maintaining the anachronistic Treaty of Guarantee, the right of intervention, and the permanent presence of troops. And I would like, dear friends, to recall the UN Secretary General's statement of June 2017, in which he stressed that progress in this chapter of security and guarantees is an essential element in reaching an overall agreement. Following a period of stalemate, and despite our disappointment, we undertook new initiative to resume the process from where it was let off at Grand Montana, culminating to the joint understanding reached with the UN Secretary General and the then Turkish Cypriot leader on November 25th, 2019, which reaffirmed the principles for the resumption of a new round of talks, namely the joint declaration of 11 February 2014, the prior convergences, and the six-point framework the UN Secretary General presents at Grand Montana. Regrettably, once again, Turkey undermined the prospect of resuming the negotiating process, and instead, in the meeting held in Geneva in April 2021, they presented their position for changing the agreed basis of a settlement from a federal solution to a two-state solution. Dear friends, nonetheless, our side undertook another initiative, which also led to a new joint meeting of the leaders of the two communities with the Secretary General in September last year, during which it was agreed that the Secretary General would proceed with the appointment of an envoy in order to deliberate with both sides and all interested parties so as to reach common ground for a new peace process to resume. Excuse me. Yet again, Turkey refused to uphold the said agreement. We also continue taking initiatives to break the impasse through a letter I had sent to the Turkish Cypriot leader in May 23 this year, by which I conveyed constructive proposals for the adoption of bold confidence-building measures, of win-win confidence-building measures, measures which unfortunately were immediately rejected by the Turkish Cypriot side, which submitted counter-proposals in line with their aim for a two-state solution. Based on the above mentioned, I believe that it's clear that the Greek Cypriot community has exerted and will continue to exert every possible effort for the resumption of the talks in order to reach a settlement based on the United Nations resolutions. And as I have emphasized, the only way forward in resolving conflicts and for peace to prevail is none other than the unwavering adherence to international law and the UN Charter, not as arbitrarily interpreted by those who seek to disguise their revisionist aspiration. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, during my 10-year tenure, I might not have been able to enjoy what the vast majority would have also wished: the necessary reforms of the international organization, the resolution of international conflicts, and tackling challenges that affect hundreds of millions of people, such as hunger, poverty, and climate change. I might have not been able to see my homeland reunited with my Greek and Turkish Cypriot compatriots living in conditions of peace, prosperity, and stability. However, I earnestly hope that during my lifetime, I will be able to witness a better and more stable future for humanity. Thank you for your understanding.
En nombre de la Asamblea, agradezco al presidente de la República de Chipre la declaración que acaba de formular y pido a protocolo que acompañe a su excelencia.